Have you heard stories of fairies, dragons, or wizards and found them fascinating? There are so many stories of these types of beings. Are they just the stuff of myths, or is there something more to them? Today we're exploring the realm of the mystical from frequency perspective and talking about whether these beings actually exist, some of their key characteristics, and what you need to be aware of. And after the discussion, we get to the most important part of this episode. The group frequency calibration at the end is where the frequency work happens and where change actually occurs. So be sure to listen to that. Without releasing distortion patterns targeted by the GFC, the change you want will be more difficult to attain because you haven't addressed the root of the issue. My name is Karen Cheong, and today in Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, we're discussing fairies, dragons, and wizards. Only stuff of myths?
So Karen, growing up, I watched a lot of movies and read a lot of books on fairies. I was kind of obsessed.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of people these days that believe in fairies.
Yeah.
I was wondering, are they actually a real thing, or are they just myths like dragons and wizards and things?
Yeah. So I love this question. And what I'm going to say about this is that just because we can't see something doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't exist. Okay? Just like, for example, light exists on a really broad spectrum, and with our naked eye, we can only perceive a very narrow spectrum of it. So we know that infrared light exists, and we know that UV light exists, but we can't actually see it with our physical eyes, but we know it's there. So there are many things that are beyond what we can physically perceive that exist. What I'll also say about this topic, because it's huge, and there are a lot of people who are quote unquote experts in these things, I'm going to talk about it from my perspective from frequency level. And at this level, it doesn't have all the human projection or story or all that stuff on it, because a lot of stuff around these creatures, because we've had them in our stories for so long. Okay, so I'm going to talk about these things from a frequency perspective and what their characteristics are, and how they can help us, and what you should be aware of, and all that good stuff.
Oh, great. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So to just go a little bit further into that, there are fairy frequencies, there are dragon frequencies, there are wizard frequencies, and there are what I will call the mystical serpent frequency. And there are many, many other beings. We're just talking about these four at this particular time. Okay, so they're very different. Okay, so the frequencies, so just backing up again, for those of you who are newer, right? Everything is, to me, when I perceive it, when I tap in, is like a frequency signature. It's like a bundle, okay? So whether you're a person, a plant, or the thing is a plant, if it's something disembodied like a dead person, to me, it's just a bundle of frequencies, make sense? That has a certain characteristic. They do certain things, that bundle of frequencies, and they sort of interplay in a certain way, and we have a dynamic with them. Okay, so let's start with something like the fairies, because you loved them so much when you were growing up. Okay, and you and I have talked about fairies a little bit, in past episodes. So the fairy frequency is very real. It is what I would call an earth plane frequency. So they don't, they're very bound to the earth, meaning they're not something that you'll find on our star system somewhere. They're very earth-oriented.
Like this planet.
This planet Earth.
Ah, no wonder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. This planet Earth. Exactly. And so they have a very specific frequency. They're very light in frequency. They're not the same. So meaning within the fairy frequency, there are variations.
Oh, sure.
So if some people who are able to perceive the fairies, and it's funny, some people see them and they don't know quite what to do with it. They're different. So meaning there are fairies that are look like small kids. They're very they're bigger. Does that make sense? They look like, I don't know, like infant size. They're bigger.
Oh, sure.
And there are fairies that are very tiny. Okay, like the size of like smaller than my fist, like this big. Okay, and they look like little spheres of light. So it kind of depends where on the fairy realm that you are. Not all fairies are the same. Okay, and so how somebody might perceive them changes depending on the sensitivity of the person and what they're like. And they're very, very, their frequency is very light, okay? It tends to be, they tend to congregate in certain places, Okay, so there's certain places on the earth that have higher fairy frequency than others. So for example, if you happen to be of Celtic descent, so if you're in, Ireland or Scotland or parts of France or like, the United Kingdom, you'll find places that are actually fairy glens, like for real, legit. You walk into that space and you're like, oh, we are not alone. And you can feel them, yeah. And it was funny because once Chris and I were in Ireland, and for some reason, we were in this on this walk in this on this very grand estate, and it was it's now public. You can tour it. It used to belong to a family that had a lot of money.
Okay.
And there was this sort of hike that everybody would go to the left, let's just say. And there was like this sign that was kind of moldering with like a little arrow pointing to the right, and randomly into this field. And we were like, let's just go to the right for some reason. So we like walk through this field and end up in this little cluster of woods. And when we got into that cluster of woods, I was like, fairies. You could feel them. I was like we weren't expecting to be there, right? We weren't expecting to be there. We weren't expecting them to be there, but you could feel that frequency very strongly in that place. And if you're someone sensitive, you can, and if they allow you to, because they tend to hide if they don't trust you, basically, they'll come around you, which is because they're curious. And like I said, some people see them, and they'll look like almost like a little, like a smaller kid, because they're the bigger ones look like small kids, small children, which is big for fairyland. Yeah. So the fairy realm is amazing. They are they can play with things, so they'll disappear. So for example, when we were there in this fairy glen, we realized, we want to give them, because we're in their space. It's sort of like walking into someone's home and not bringing something.
Sure.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Like you want to, bring flowers or a little something.
Something
like you're going to, something. So we didn't have anything because we weren't expecting to be there. So what we did, I was like, we pulled out coins, not because they were valuable, because they were shiny. So I was like, we picked out the shiniest ones, polished, and then put them in certain places, like hidden in like underneath leaves and all that sort of stuff. You can see them. Like if you walked by this place, you would never see these coins because they were just there.
Yeah.
Like sort of hidden. We knew the fairies would know what we were doing. We were giving them a little gift. And anyway, we went back the next day, just to take pictures and that type of thing. And the coins were all gone. We'd hidden those coins. They weren't just sitting on the ground like obviously there. We hid them.
Oh my gosh.
And they were all gone.
So because fairies are of the earth plane, they can
move things.
Move things on the earth plane.
Yeah.
That is so fun.
I was just like, and it's funny because we looked for them.
Yeah. You're like, they found them.
Yeah, they found them.
That's so cute.
Yeah. So the fairies are definitely a thing. A lot of people, so I just want to talk about something a little bit different. So there are some people who have the fairy frequency running in them.
Really?
Yeah. So there's some people who are, and I've seen this very rarely, who have so much fairy frequency, I would call them an embodied fairy. I've only met a couple of people like this. It's very unusual. Those people actually don't deal very well with being human because humans are very dense. We operate in a certain way. We're trying to, like, you know what I mean? Like fairies don't have that concern. They're very, very light and they want to play.
But even though they're the earth plane.
Yeah, but they're not, humans are, what I mean by it's like dense in terms of what we want, what we desire, how we act, how we are with each other, how we treat nature, how we, all that stuff, like money. Like fairies don't value that stuff. They don't care.
Even though they're both associated with earth plane.
Yes.
It's a way different spectrum.
Yeah. What they are concerned with is not what we are concerned with as humans. So with a couple of fairies that I've met where I'm like, whoa, like literally like little tiny people, like very small people who you're just like, this is a fairy. And they don't function very well with humans, you know what I mean? They tend to be like, the ones I've met, I'm not saying that all of them are like this, but the ones I've met are kind of like a little bit homeless, a little bit, you know what I mean? They're just not, they can't interact, function here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't do well with jobs. They can't. It's not like their concern.
Wow, because they have fairy frequency in them.
They have fairy frequency in them, and they just can't be like, it's very hard for them to be human. Now, there are some people who aren't like that, so they have fairy frequency running through them. So those people have an association with the fairy. So it's very easy, like when you were a kid, there are people that I meet that have that fairy frequency running in them. So they associate with, like, there's something about that frequency that feels like home, and it feels like fun and playful and light, because what you're doing is that those stories trigger in you that memory of your own frequency that's running through you. So I don't have the fairy frequency. It's not something I have. You know,
no, I
it's
could
not-
see that
yeah.
that would not be
Yeah, it's not something I have at all.
Right.
But my husband Chris has it actually.
Oh.
And so for him, when as soon as like we walked into that space, like even before I registered it, he was like, fairies. You know, he just knew. And we will walk by some places. And he's like, is this the fairy glen? I'm like, and then I check. I'd be like, totally, right? And then we get really quiet. So you just know because you can. It's like knowing when your buddies are around.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You kind of just. You
it's
have
an
a little,
aspect of you. So
exactly.
It's easier to locate it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and if you have fairies frequencies running in you, you can ask them for help. They can help you.
Wow.
So you can just say to them, like, so for example, when we were going, now I don't have this, but Chris does. And so we were asking for help one time when we were in Ireland finding something. And so we were in a fairy glen and I was paying respect. We were paying respect to them. And we were asking for their blessing for a particular journey we were making. And so because we asked for their help, they like totally smoothed that journey.
Oh.
Okay, they just helped us find the way. And we didn't know where we were going, but they planted, like along the way we asked different people and they just like took us exactly to the right place. Like we did,
and then you know.
And then we know like we were being helped.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way we would have found what we were looking for.
Yeah.
You know, no way. It was so random, you know, like what we were trying to find. So you can ask them for help. So they will help you. So they have this, and even if you don't feel very good, like, so for example, if you're just having a day, you're like, oh God, you know, I just don't feel very great. If you want to, I'm not saying that you form a habit of this, but if you're like, I would like to call in that fairy energy, like I would like to amplify my own fairy frequency. So you can ask them to help you do that. Because you're not asking them to do anything to you, right? Because it's in you already. It's already there. So you can just focus on that fairy frequency and you'll start to feel lighter. Because it's like you're calling on them, right? And you're calling on that frequency within yourself to amplify. So it can be a really helpful little tool.
Cool.
And because they're like light and playful, it just shifts, it can help you to come out of a place where it's heavier. For example,
take things so seriously.
They can, and because they're so earthbound, they can help you come into. You know what I mean? You're just like, oh, I feel better. Okay, now I can settle into my 0 point a little bit better. Oh, that amplifies.
And this is like
the fairy
only
frequency.
people who have that fairy frequency. And how would you know? I guess if you just ask.
Or how would you know if you have the fairy frequency? Because you associate with them.
Oh, okay.
So you know, like when you were a kid.
Yeah.
You're just totally into fairies. You're like, really dig fairies.
Yeah. Don't know why, but I dig it. Yeah.
Like I want little fairy wings.
Yep.
I love like they're
I
little,
was fairy for Halloween so many times.
Yeah. They're like little kids, and not all kids are drawn to fairies.
No,
not all, because I was never drawn to them.
Oh.
You know, like I thought they were cool, but I never wanted to be Tinkerbell. Like that was just not my gig. You know what I mean? Like I just never. That was not my thing.
Okay.
You know, but there's some kids who are like really by the way, this is not just a girl thing.
Right.
Okay. Males can have this.
Yes, of course.
So if your little boy wants to be a fairy.
Yes.
It's
That's
okay.
Yeah. Yes.
You can have your fairy frequency. Men can have fairy frequency in them.
Yes, there are men fairies.
Yes, exactly. There are fairies in the masculine. So it's totally okay. It's not. I know in Disneyland it's girl fairies.
Yeah.
But that's not it. Okay, it's just for people to know. Okay, so that's just about the fairy frequency. They're super fun.
That was fun.
Yeah. So dragons. So dragons are also a frequency. Okay, and they're a very specific kind of being. They are all about power. So I just want to make this very clear. They're not dark, and nor are they light. They're neutral. They're just about power. So they're beings. Okay, and they are like about transmuting on the physical plane. Okay, so that's what their like characteristic or ability is. So if you have the dragon frequency running in you, you can create a tremendous amount of change on the earth plane. It's just like, you know, just if you think about dragons and how they're portrayed even in China or anywhere else. I mean, they're mythical and mystical, but they are about power. They're not like, I don't know, like just chilling. You know what I mean? They are very direct. They don't pretend to be anything other than they are. And like I said, if you have this running within you, you can evoke a tremendous amount of change. Who's the Sir Richard Branson has dragon frequency, the guy who owns Virgin America.
Oh, okay.
He has dragon frequency running through him. Elon Musk has a little bit of dragon frequency running through him.
Okay.
But do you see that? This is like a tremendous amount of change in the physical. And it's about power.
Cool.
So now, what I'll say about the dragons is that Now, you'll know if you have dragon frequency. I'm just going to back up, sorry, a little bit. It's just like the fairies, right? Because you'll have had an affinity for the dragons. There's something about them that fascinates you, and you've been curious about them. Now, some people actually will almost like a dream about them. Okay, so you can have the. So let me just make this really clear. Dragons aren't warm and fuzzy, okay, at all. Like they're not like bunnies. They're solitary, they're powerful, and they're really kind of very direct and no nonsense. Okay, so if you're going to, and you don't ask politely with dragons. You have to be able to have the strength to summon them if you have the dragon frequencies within you, because it's about respect.
Right.
It's like I respect you, you respect me. We are both in our power.
Wow, that's so you. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a very different. It's not like, please, can you come help me? It's not like that.
I see.
It's like,
that's good to note. Like the way you summon these different frequencies are different. Depending on the characteristic of that.
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, and so the dragons are something that you can call on if you need help with forward movement. Be aware that if you summon them, please don't be frivolous, because they'll stop answering your summoning if they feel like, do you know what I mean? Like if you're like, can you find me a parking spot? They're like, well,
that's not my purpose. I'm here for bigger things. Yeah,
they're not going to be bothered with you.
So that's also a respect thing. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's about holding respect for each other. Yeah. And what I'll say is that humans, for a long time, because humans, have done this with various things, have like abused dragons and also serpents, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So meaning what they do, so they use dark magic to entrap them, to be able to steal their power. Just think about this.
How human.
Yeah, it's very human, right? And so dragons are a little skittish with us, understandably, because they have been abused by us, meaning entrapped by magic and then used in a way, or abused in a way that is not aligned with them.
Like just, for greed and
for
whatever
greed
humans.
And to empower the person who is using their, to have more power. Okay, so there's a lot of that can happen. Okay. And so just for everyone to be aware that these are creatures and they can be abused, even though that we can't see them and they are different. So be mindful of how you hold yourself with them, meaning like to respect, right? This is the fundamental basis of a dragon's relationship. It's like, I see you, you see me, we understand each other's power, we accept it, we acknowledge it, and now we're coming together to have, you're summoning them to ask them for something, and they will determine whether they want to.
Got it.
Okay.
That's good.
That's good for them to know. Yeah, it's good to know about them.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the dragon energy. I mentioned what I call the serpent energy.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's interesting because a lot of these are in the Chinese zodiac.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, they're a very specific creature, a very specific package of frequencies. Okay, so for what I would call the serpents, right? I'm not talking about snakes. I mean, yes, you can see snakes in the ground on the earth, but I mean serpents not exactly in the physical form. I mean on the mystical plane. Okay. Does this make sense? The same plane that the dragons exist in. Okay. So meaning in the non-seen.
Yes.
Okay. So they are very, very different from dragons. Okay. So serpents are very mystical. Their power is to transmute. That's what they do. They change things. They can help things change from one form to another. Okay. So meaning, like if you think about alchemy, right? Alchemy is sort of this process of turning lead to gold, for example, or the clarification of something, the change from one thing to another. That's what the serpents can do. They change things from one state to another state. That's I'm boiling it down, but that's their main, like, purpose or whatever they can do. Let's just call it. I don't know what else to call it. Yeah. Like function, I guess. Sure. I don't know what else to call it. Sure. But they're not like the dragons. They're not as direct. They're serpents. Kind of like slithery. Yeah. Right? They're slippery. So with the serpents, if you are somebody who has an affinity for them, you likely will be aware of the frequency that they are, meaning that they tend to be a little bit less direct. They can hide. They you have to be not only in respect, but understand that things are very fluid. that things can change. Okay? So meaning, if you summon a dragon and there's an agreement, that agreement will happen.
Mm-hmm.
With the serpent, it may not. So that's just the way serpents are. And
Yeah.
it's not that they are duplicitous. This is their nature. So if you're calling on them, be aware that that is their nature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And they are extraordinarily powerful. That is why they too have been often abused by humans, because they have the potential to transmute. But just think about everything. Like, you want to change from one form to another.
Like a situation?
Like a situation or a stage in life, right?
Oh,
so, for
okay.
example, life into death, death into life, from sickness to wellness, wellness to sickness, love, out of love. Like, all of these are transitions, yes? From one state to another state.
Yes.
From like scarcity to abundance, right? All of these things are movements. Does that make sense? It's transmutation, like from one thing to another. Think about how much power that is. It's extraordinary.
Yes.
Okay. So that's why they're abused by humans. So just be aware that with all of these things, to be very respectful and to not mess with, like if you're going to summon them, to like be aware of what you're doing, like to not mess with things if you're not sure what you're doing, is what my point is.
Yes. Yes.
And I'll just give you a little story. So one time, just what does that mean? Like, what can that mean if you're like messing with things and you don't know what you're doing?
Oh, okay.
I did this.
Okay.
Because I didn't know what I was doing. I was a little bit, I was very early in my spirit journey, and I was being arrogant without realizing that I was. Okay. So what happened was, we were going on a spirit journey with a woman, and it turns out that she has a lot of dragon energy in her. And part of what her purpose was to help dragons that have been abused by humans. Okay? So, like I said, there's a lot of dark magic. I don't really talk about it a lot, but there's a lot of it. And she would help them release from those bindings, because they've been in those like sort of hells for longer periods of time than they needed to be. And she would help to release them. Okay? That was her job. I didn't know that, because I didn't know what I was doing. And she was supposed to be leading a journey, and I thought she needed my help, because she just, she had disappeared. Like, she was supposed to be leading a journey, we'd paid her, but she sort of like fell off the map. And I thought, oh, she's in trouble. I'm going to go journey with my consciousness to see if she needs help. She didn't need help. Okay, she didn't, but I didn't understand she didn't need help. So meaning, when I perceived her in my inner vision, and again, I didn't have my abilities yet. Okay, so this is me like a long time ago, 12 years ago or something like this. Okay, when I went in, because I can journey, I've always been able to, into this other realm, and I went to go help her, she had her back turned to me. And I kept trying to call to her to say, like, do you need help, etc. And she kept turning her back to me. So now I have learned that means, I don't want your help. Please go away.
Right.
Then I just thought, well, of course you need my help.
Oh, boy.
So I went to get closer to help her. And she basically summoned the dragons, and like they came at me because I was coming into her space.
Right.
It was disrespectful.
Right.
Okay. I was very much pushing into her space.
Right.
And she had told me clearly twice, no.
Mm-hmm.
And I ignored that.
You're like, it means yes.
Well, because I thought she needed my help. This is my little mental humanness.
Sure.
So the dragons came, like literally one came at me so hard and fast in my physical body, I jumped back because it came like right at me. And I was like, oh, I should not be, I shouldn't be here. This is not good. So I apologized, pulled myself out. For the next month, I had so much heat, like literally my skin was splitting apart. My eyes were all red. I was itching. My skin was inflamed. I was like fire like crazy. And you already know I tend towards heat. So it was like my body was literally exploding from the heat, like literally cracking. And I had to do some work with somebody to clear them, because I was an idiot, basically, without realizing it. You know what I mean? I was just playing with something I didn't know. I didn't know. So that's what I'm saying. Please don't mess with things that you don't know about. There can be a consequence to it that you may not want or may not even realize that there is. You know?
Right.
So that's what I mean by that. You have to be
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I learned that the very hard way. I was like, no means no, and don't mess with the dragons. Okay. So now the wizard frequency.
Yes.
Okay. So this is something, so the wizards are kind of an interesting, so this is an interesting, because people are very fascinated by like Merlin and all that stuff,
Yes.
Okay, so just to be really clear, the wizard frequency is neutral. It's the human that is either dark or light.
Okay.
Okay, so you can use your wizard frequency for good or bad. And it comes in various degrees of intensity in people. But the wizard frequency, I just want to distinguish this. This is not the witch frequency. The witch frequency is different. I know that people are like, what's the difference? The witch frequency is lower in resonance, and it's much, much earthier. Okay, and I know the wizards can manipulate on the earth realm, but the witches really are about manipulation on the earth realm. Okay, whether it's for the light or for the dark, but they can do things on the earth realm. Okay, they can heal, they can do negative things to people, destroy. Yeah, they can do the whole spectrum. Wizards are higher in resonance, and they have their magic can bridge between earth and star, depending on who the person is. So you can start to access like that realm of star frequency, which gives you more access to like universal frequencies. Okay, that gives their magic more power. It's not as dense as the earthly plane.
Yeah,
it's higher in resonance because they're using both star energy and earth frequencies at the same time. And what they can do is that they somehow will like find a solution that is not ordinary, and somehow things just like magically align. It's kind of a form of creation manifestation that's specific to them. So they have a way of, it's like they'll know that they'll come up with an idea. They're like, this is what it is that I intend. Somehow a crazy idea or something else will come to them of how to do that. And then things will align to make that happen. It's great. I've seen just a few people who have this, and they come up with things like different healing modalities, some of them. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of somebody that I know that totally has this. And the reason, the first thing I think of with wizard is this person, because there was a time we were at the redwood forest and there was mushrooms involved. And they brought up that they became this wizard. And everyone could see it. They could see it. It was just bizarre. And we were playing some funky music of like doing, it was some weird other culture, just instruments. And it was like the beard of the wizard. It was like he was playing his own beard hair. It was really bizarre. And, we're in a very magical place. On some magical substances.
But you could see it.
I could see it. But this person, aside from that night in his day-to-day, always comes up with ideas that are 10 years ahead of anybody else. But the only issue is they don't align. It's almost like there's something missing. So I was going to ask you if maybe his wizard frequency is out of balance, or I don't know how you would...
It's not integrated with him properly.
Yes.
Yeah. So you know how when you were on mushrooms, you guys could all perceive it?
Yes.
That's because you were at the resonance where you could perceive it. Make sense? Like you had to be in that resonance to be able to perceive it. But you all perceived it. Because you were all in that resonance together.
And nothing was even said. It was very clear.
Like, it was very clear.
Yeah.
So all of you had the same experience of this person. So you're at a resonance where it was apparent to you. That's what I'm saying. It's not necessarily just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. It just means you're not aware of it.
Yes.
So that's exactly right. So, but someone who has, and somebody who has a wizard frequency it's integrated, they'll have ideas or inspiration that's ahead of their time, or on the edge of what people think is possible.
Yes.
It's just like people are like, that's not possible. And they're like, yeah, it is.
No, it literally, that was him constantly. But then there was a misalignment.
Because he couldn't bring it into form.
He couldn't bring it into
form. Yeah. So he just needs to be realigned, basically.
I'll have him call you.
But there's somebody I work with who is, let's just say, extremely highly placed, right, in terms of his abilities and his how he influences the world, and he's a wizard. And people will, it's not like people are like, in his, he works in a very conservative environment, so they're not thinking, gee, this guy's a wizard. They're just thinking that what they think, though, is he's kind of like the golden boy, because he comes up with all these kind of almost seem like harebrained schemes, but they always work. and they always make a lot of money. And it's kind of interesting, you know?
Yeah.
And they don't know why. So he has issues with that in a way because he's like the golden boy, right? It's like people love him because he makes a lot of money and all that sort of good stuff. And then also he has enemies because people are jealous of it, right?
Yeah,
but you see how I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because if you think about the wizard archetype as humans, they're kind of like loners, right?
They are loners.
They're not like hanging out with like a bunch of other people.
Nope.
Like
they're not
having
all
a beverage.
about community.
No, they're not
kind
about
of
that.
by themselves doing their magic thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what
that's
this person
like
is.
This person is.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So you'll see it. So do you see? That's what I mean by this is a frequency that runs through people. And it can be something, if you have it, if you come into alignment with it, it can create a lot of magic in the world, right? Because you're using that frequency. I mean, it's just you being you. I mean, you may not know why you have it, but if you amplify that, then even more can happen.
And integrate it.
Yeah, you can integrate and amplify it, then things can really change in the world around you in the physical reality, which is really cool.
So, Karen, wait, does that mean wizards are male and witches are female?
No, not at all. I'm glad you asked that. Not at all. They could be in either gender, right? So in either sex. So there are male and female witches, and there are male and female wizards. So it's a frequency that runs through us. So just like the fairies can be male and female.
Okay.
You know, it's just about how the frequency shows up through that person.
And wizards aren't particularly like more powerful. It's just a different.
It's just a different. It's not. So power has to do with the person. Okay.
Right.
Not about the frequency.
Okay.
So the clearer and higher you are in resonance, the more power you have, especially if you're in the center of yourself, meaning in your 0 point.
Okay.
So what I meant by resonance was meaning, so the earth resonance is lower in vibrational level. So please know this is not like a judgment in terms of which one's better or worse. Okay,
Yeah,
so it just simply has to do with resonance. Okay, it's just like the mechanics of it. It has nothing to do with the judgment of whether it's good or bad or what are better. Okay, so earth frequencies are lower in vibration because they're denser. They have form. As you move up in resonance and you include things, for example, like the wizards do, which is like the frequencies having to do within stars and that kind of magic and that kind of resonance, it is higher in resonance than the earth frequencies. Okay, it just is.
Yeah.
So it means that they wield a different kind of magic and a different kind of potential.
Got it.
They're just different. It's like, it's very different. It's like a cat is different from a dog. They're just totally different creatures.
Yeah, one's better,
they're just different.
Okay, and they can be any gender.
Yeah,
Thank you.
any gender.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's really cool and interesting.
Yeah.
So would you say the GFC after this could help people who might have some of these frequencies?
Yeah. So what the GFC at the end is sort of, it will help you to come into the 0 point that is you and also become more aware of those frequencies.
Okay.
So just like an introduction to what these different frequencies are. Now, if you don't feel anything, likely none of these frequencies run in you, and that's okay.
That's fine.
That's fine. But it'll just have you, even if they don't run in you, if you happen to be in a place where these things are, you'll be more aware of it.
And that's cool too.
Yeah, totally.
That's cool to be more.
Yeah, exactly. It's just more magical and more fun. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for all of this info.
Well, you're welcome.
Very cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. And for those of you who, like I said, would like to become more aware of these frequencies that exist, please listen to the group frequency calibration that's associated with this episode. And if you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more episodes in the future, just click on the red subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of this video. We're about to start the group frequency calibration, or GFC, where we actually do the frequency work and where change is catalyzed. To get to the GFC, click on the square that'll appear to the right or the link in the description below. It's time to bring in a new experience, a new consciousness, and a new world. Let's rise together.